Hello and welcome back to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. My name is John, and today, as always, I am joined by my co-host Johnny. Johnny, how are you doing? And I believe you might have a little bit of news for us to share.
Yeah, look, I'm doing really well, John. I think it's great. It's great to be back after a little bit of a break, a bit of a winter break. I hope you're doing well, John. But yeah, you're right. I'll get straight into our very exciting news. And this is really news about we have a really PGC has a really cracking run into the end of the year, but in October things are really going to step up a gear because the two Johnnies of Perth Gaming Crew are going to be returning to Melbourne and to PAX Australia this year.
Thank
Very
you.
exciting. And not only that, but this time we'll both be there for the full 3 days, the full enchilada. We'll be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, getting in amongst it all. I'm very excited, John. I know you're very excited to get over back to Melbourne in October. Yeah, really, really thrilled that we're getting back there again.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we had a blast last time, and people at Perth and Beyond, if you missed out on our episode, go back and check it from last year, where we talked about our expectations of the show and our experiences after. If you haven't bought your tickets and you're in Melbourne, or you're thinking to fly over there, or you just need a break and play some games, absolutely check it out. It is a wonderful experience that we'll talk more about on a future episode. We'll be all over that, and Johnny's all over the Insta with that too. So keep an eye on what we do in that space, but very exciting announcement for us. Cannot wait to be there. All right, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. We were talking about what kind of topics the people of Perth and Beyond would like to hear about, and we decided we are well overdue to talk about some of our most memorable experiences as gamers, particularly games that just have a special memory to us. So we're going to cover 3 games each, and these are games that are not necessarily the best games of all time. They're not necessarily the best in their genre. They're not the ones we're saying you need to go out and pick up and play over like Ghost of Tsushima or anything like that. These are the games that just had a special place in our memory because of where we were at the time as a gamer and what that game was, compared to Johnny, hundreds and thousands of games we have played or left on our pile of shame. So I'm going to kick us off today, and I'm going to jump around the console and PC generations even, because we do have a bit of a broad spectrum of games to cover. But right out the gate, when we talked about this topic, Johnny, the first one that came to mind of all the games, and it was a bit of a surprise to me, is the original Resident Evil for the Gamecube. So if I wind the clock back, I think I've made it known to the people of Perth and Beyond that I've always been a Nintendo gamer. I had the NES, the SNES, the N64, and then the GameCube. And when I had the GameCube, I was coming into like my uni years. And I don't know if you like remember those days, Johnny, but that's like when you're a lot more informed about your console choice. You're looking at the competition. You've got a bit more purchasing power. You're definitely part of the console wars. You're not wearing your console wars outfit, but you're definitely part of it and thinking, oh, I'm a PlayStation boy or an Xbox boy or a Nintendo boy, whatever you are. Anyway, for me, this game, not just within the GameCube library, but within my own gaming library over all the years, is one of the most outstanding for a whole lot of reasons. At that point in time, first of all, I was absolutely looking over at PlayStation and going, I wouldn't mind me some God of War on PlayStation 2. I wouldn't mind me some Halo on the Xbox, and hungry for like a game on the Nintendo system, which, as you might recall, Johnny, the little purple GameCube promoting even more positive and happy games than normal, like Super Mario Sunshine. It's just like, where is my gritty game? Where is my M or R-rated game that I definitely felt that. So when, I used to read all the Nintendo magazines back in the day. When I heard that Capcom had made this exclusive deal with Nintendo to bring over 4 Resident Evil games, and knowing that this series had its genesis on PlayStation, it was kind of like Fan Wars 1. It was like, oh, we got one over PlayStation, and this is actually super exciting because console exclusives was such a big thing at the time. So this game in particular, when I bought it, oh my god, it absolutely blew my socks off. So this is some footage from the HD version, which is really just an up-res version of what the remake was. So the version of Resident Evil that was released on GameCube was a remake of the PlayStation 1 game already back in that era. And the first thing you absolutely notice with this game is how stunning it looks. It uses a particular kind of distinct visual style where there are pre-rendered backgrounds, and some of those backgrounds have like full motion video to them. So there might be, for example, you'll see like in a bedroom or in a hallway, there's just candles flickering, and it looks, to me, that was the very first time I thought, this is realism. This is realism in graphics. Now, like, the characters obviously have a bit of an anime style. They're 3D models. They don't look as realistic. But at the time, that was a real house. The Spencer Mansion was real, and it was absolutely freaking terrifying because it looked so real. I just remember like spending time like on my GameCube, standing outdoors, watching water trickle down like the bricks because it was raining, and going, that looks real. Like, the water effects are incredible. And I think it's also at that time, Johnny, I don't know about you, but for me, like being in my uni days and coming out of high school, that's when you're noticing things and talking about graphics and all those kind of things. Like, it's very different to like when you're a kid. So graphically, it absolutely was incredibly memorable to me. The audio was unforgettable as well. Like the just the quietness in the game, the kind of tense music that would play in the background depending on what's going on. Even when you go down the stairs with Jill or Chris, and there's a creak to the stairs, and you're just like, oh Jesus, why do I have to go to the basement again? I don't want to go to the basement. Like, I have to go to the basement. I do not want to go there. So for those of you unfamiliar with the series, it's a survival horror game. You choose as Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield, and you navigate this mansion, which later expands into, like all the Resident Evil games, there is more to the plot. There is an entire, and look, spoiler alert, it's an old game, underground lab. Super cool. You find out that the people who lived in the Spencer Mansion have all been like subjected to this infectious disease that's rotted their brain and turned them into terrifying creatures. I think one of the sad kind of like outstanding things to me also was the fact that Lisa, the kid, you find a note from her, and you find her later on, and she's just like this creepy hunchback monster in chains, groaning and moaning and following you around wherever you go. Absolutely terrifying. And it just looks the part too. I also do just want to mention two other things that were just makes this game stay with me. So, Johnny, I beat this game 4 times, 2 with both characters. I'm feeling the need to go play it as I talk about it. I just love it that much. And it's not necessarily the best Resident Evil. It's just one that's special to me. But again, just like another really cool moment, going down into the underground lab, and you find yourself in front of this giant glass window, and something goes wrong with like the power and the security mechanism, and you're given this little time frame to like follow these instructions to get everything repaired. And in front of you is this giant freaking shark that's smashing on the window, and the glass, I remember just playing my GameCube and going, it's breaking through my freaking TV. Like, it's smashing it. It was so stressful. This gigantic shark banging and banging and banging and banging. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So, look, I'm saying it now. Again, this is an episode about what we think are the best games of all time. But for me, this is the best looking game on the GameCube. Better than the Wind Waker and better than Prime. Better than anything on the Xbox or PS2. I'm bringing out the old fanboy. Have at me, people of Perth and Beyond. Johnny, do you remember this game? I remember you at a GameCube. Do you remember this one kicking around?
I just think this is such a great example of what a diverse library of games the GameCube actually had. Because it kind of because it was a Nintendo system, I think there was a tendency to sort of typecast it. I know that's not quite the right terminology, but it was kind of considered like people would associate it with Mario Sunshine and the Wind Waker and these colorful, bright games. But it actually had it had some really interesting titles released for it, and that were, classic. They're really classic additions to your GameCube game collection. Yeah, like I still have my GameCube. I've held on to my GameCube. I've sold some older consoles, but I've hung on to the GameCube for now because I think it was a really cool system. I picked up my GameCube very late in the generation, like almost just as the Wii was releasing.
Oh, very curious.
Yeah. I was just yeah, a bit of a bargain because it was close to the next generation, and I was a uni student. I was in, so it was picking up games at a bargain rate was always a bit of a pull. But yeah, no, I think it's really cool that you've focused on this because it's such a good example of what the diversity of games you could find in the GameCube library.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, just on that point with the GameCube, like, coming into it at the end of the generation, you'd have this great library of, like, Metroid Prime, which came out later, The Wind Waker, which came out later. But for me, I went through that anticipation of where is the new Zelda? And then it was revealed and it was Kid Zelda. And that's still my favorite Zelda game of all time. What are they going to do with Metroid? What's Donkey Kong going to look like beyond Donkey Kong, the Bongo game? So this is kind of like a savior game. Was like, this is... wow, my GameCube has really got a lot of value, and this is a standout game overall. But so that's Resident Evil for the GameCube. It's considered a remake, definitely more than a remaster. You can get a HD version these days if you want to go back and experience the tank controls, which I'm sure are hard these days. Johnny, what is your first pick when we go down memory lane?
I'm going to keep us in the kind of uni days kind of space, and for me, when I was kind of in the middle of my uni years, I was playing a lot of the Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers on the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
I'm calling this one out because I didn't actually own a PlayStation 2, but when it was kind of like a regular thing when I was catching up with uni mates that we'd be playing this on one of my mates' PlayStation, on their PlayStation 2. It came out at a time when around the time that the 3 Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films were coming out in cinemas over the course of sort of early 2000s to mid 2000s. I think I would have been playing this around like 2003 or so. I'm guessing. My memories are a little bit foggy from that time, but it was just such a great fun hack and slash adventure game set in the Tolkien Legendarium. You get to play as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and you're just working your way through hordes of the Saruman's Uruk-hai orcs.
The Uruk-hai.
Yeah, it was, so for me, I know, like, we had a discussion offline earlier in the week about like this game over, say, the Return of the King. For me personally, well, I was playing a lot of this at the time when I was in uni. I didn't play so much of Return of the King, but it was also because I think out of probably the movie I enjoyed the most out of that Peter Jackson trilogy was The Two Towers. But it was, it's kind of like a game that I would regularly play with uni buddies when I caught up at their place back in that time. And I think it's still regarded as like one of the best Tolkien Lord of the Rings games of all time. It's like people still appreciate it. Like obviously it was a game of its time, of its limitations of that particular hardware, but for what it was fun and it was sort of very addictive. So have you had experience with the Lord of the Rings games from that era?
Massively. So that time for me was like Lord of the Rings mania. The films were everywhere. They were probably some of the most exciting times watching movies growing up because that like beloved story had finally come to the cinemas. I thought when this game came out, so I think the third one, I had Return of the King on GameCube. I think this one did come on GameCube. I'm not sure. I know it was cross-platform. I think it was actually a brilliant game because it dodged the whole movie license like stigma of being a terrible game. is kind of a perfect fit for what Lord of the Rings was. You would pick your favorite character, you would play with your friends. There was this depth to the combat, and it was intense. Like, you felt like you were slogging your way through those orcs. I don't know what this particular game was like compared to Return of the King, but Return of the King was like that. You had to stab them when they were down, you had to knock them down. It was hard. You'd take heaps of damage. Yeah, it was fantastic. And I know with this game and the third game, another big kind of memorable point was how it would transition to the movies into the gameplay footage. Do you remember that? And it was considered like realistic. At the time, it looked way better than this to us, though, didn't it?
Oh yeah. No, it was for its time. It was kind of mind blowing, and yeah, the gameplay was very, very hectic. It kind of felt very immersive, like you kind of could feel like you're in the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah, with the music in the background.
Yeah,
and the voice.
that's right.
I think the actors were doing their thing, weren't they?
I think there was some voice acting.
Actually.
Yeah, there was some pretty decent voice casting for what it was, for what you would get back in that era. But I thought I just a very kind of, it's, if there's a one game I associate with my uni days, it's probably this more than anything else.
Definitely. And Johnny, makes me think what we were saying at the start. Like, we're not talking about our favorite games of all time necessarily, but could you go back and play this from that era, like the way it looks and plays these days? Could you go back and enjoy it, or is it sort of like, no, it's just moved on yet?
No, I generally don't. I don't generally have that sort of issue where I feel there's not many games that I don't feel I can go back. Like, I'm not terribly fussy about graphics and things. I kind of enjoy playing old games. So if there was a way to conveniently play it, I probably would go, and particularly if I wanted to get, if I'm for some other reason like getting immersed in Tolkien. I know in a couple of years they'll be putting out the Hunt for Gollum, Lord of the Rings movie. That might get me in the mood to jump back into some of these classic Lord of the Rings games. So I can see myself definitely doing that.
100%. People of Perth and Beyond, mark it in your calendars, because we're doing a Tolkien special in 2 years, and no doubt we'll revisit that game. And Johnny, how good would it be if we could do co-op Gandalf and Aragorn teaming up to defend against Saruman and his Isengard little goons, the Uruk-hai? They need to be taken down. When I watched that footy, there were little bits about that game that you remember. I remember all the unlockables, for example, in the third one, and when you get to a new level. But the part where you'd stab an orc, like when they're down, how satisfying. I think it was like R2 or R1 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was so satisfying. You're like, I knocked you down. I got you. Twist the sword, whatever. It's all good.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, from violent to the ultra violent, in terms of my next pick, it's also a mix of kind of like the beat 'em up, bash 'em up, magic and monsters kind of thing going on, but it's also like talking about the console wars as well. Thinking of like the game, when I was thinking about the games that came to my mind, I was kind of surprised that this was in the mix. I had about 5, and I was like, oh no, I think I need to talk about it. And what I do need to talk about is God of War 3 Remastered. And it's kind of weird, but there's a lot of reasons I wanted to bring this game up in particular. So I was saying earlier, like, I'd always been into Nintendos. Now, after the Gamecube, I got into the Xbox 360, which I will still say, next to the Nintendo Switch, is my favorite console of all time, even beyond the old stuff, because it had my favorite games of all time on it. From there, I remember going, do I get an Xbox One? Do I get the PlayStation 4? And I think that's when the Wii U was, it was up, batters up, and it just didn't appeal at the time. But I remember at that time, even though I did get Resident Evil on my GameCube back in the day, the God of War series was just like, oh, this is, I don't know, Johnny, if you ever felt this playing the consoles over the years, but there's always a game or a series on another console that you're like, that's what I need, and that's going to convert me. And this was the game to do it. I remember distinctly the day I actually went to JB Hi-Fi, picked up 2 games. One was Killzone. I don't remember the subtitle for that, but it was really cool, first-person shooter. And then the other one was God of War 3 Remastered. And I was just like, I've got it. After years of just saying how amazing Nintendo is, but secretly wishing I could afford, PlayStation 3 back in the day and going, no, I've got my PlayStation 4. I'm catching up on the God of War series. Picked it up, and I'll tell you what. I mean, even looking at this footage again blows my mind. Seeing it. So growing up, I've always been like a huge fan of like mythology and monsters. I really love the old Sinbad the Sailor TV shows, Clash of the Titans, all of that stuff. Jason and the Argonauts. So I just, this is like a series I'd always want to get into and experience. Picking up the game itself, it's astonishing. So I don't know if it's the best God of War in the series. I know some people like the Ragnarok Viking stuff, and you know it's more immersive and looks better. Whatever floats your boat. But for me, this was my entry point into the God of War series, and it didn't disappoint. Here is this footage we're seeing here is from the very early game where you're literally, so Kratos, he's on this like warpath to take down all the gods of Olympus. I won't go into the story much. He's just a very angry man. He likes to rip things to shreds. And he's literally riding Gaia, one of the Titans, who, amidst all the other Titans, are climbing up Mount Olympus. And the entire opening stage is this. You fighting little, like, minions. And then in this fight, you come up against Poseidon and one of his mythical creatures. I forget the name of this one.
Is it the Kraken?
No, it looks like it's the hippo something rather. Hippo,
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
No.
Yeah, I thought it might be the Kraken, but that's in another God of War. That's in a handheld one.
Not. You're right, it's not.
And this one looks a little bit like Charybdis as well.
A little bit,
Yeah, doesn't it?
There's all sorts of things going on.
There's a lot going on in this game, Johnny. Yeah. So literally, Guy is fighting Poseidon, you're fighting Poseidon, this creature's fighting you, Guy's climbing a mountain, you're hanging on for dear life, and you're like crawling along the underneath. You're like hitting it out with your chains of fury. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Look, everything about this game is memorable. The way it feels, all the kind of Greek mythology, I guess dreams came come to realization, because you get to see Medusas, you get to see centaurs, Cyclops, Chimera. So good. And I guess for me, what I absolutely love with this game too is the animation around all that, because I loved all the Ray Harryhausen stuff from Sinbad the Sailor and Clash of the Titans and Jason and the Argonauts, and it just felt like I was in that and I was playing a game of that, albeit the ultraviolet version of it, which I do have to mention, like, it's so ridiculous. Like, there is a boss fight in this where you fight Kronos, for example, and he's literally, the opening scene is he's like squeezing you between his fingers, and Kratos is like struggling to pushing it up, and then goes to town on Kronos. And look, it's just great. It is intense. I must say, like, I don't really like gory or violent games, even though I like Mortal Kombat. But there is something about a game like this where you climb on a Cyclops and you're spamming a button to pull its eye out, and you see like the tendon or whatever it is behind the eye, rip it out, and it's just like, oh, that's just like a normal part of the game. Yeah, God of War 3 Remastered. Johnny, I know you're a little bit into Greek mythology. Does this appeal to you, or did you follow these games over the years? Because I remember you said you didn't have a PS2, but I think you had a PS4 from memory. Is that right?
I really I kind of went through a similar thing where I was on Nintendo consoles right through to the GameCube, but and I had that same kind of different console envy. For me, it wasn't the God of War games; it was the Arkham games that got me to jump across to PS3.
Yes.
But so I've never actually tried. I've never actually gotten around to the God of War games. They've always looked. I think I'd probably enjoy them, but it's just it's that thing. It's just so many games to get around to, and never quite. I probably never I never really picked up the God of War games when I was doing most of my PlayStation gaming, probably because I was in my Batman simulators, the Arkham games. So yeah, but I can see the appeal, and I can I totally get the experience that you had of, really wanting to play these games, and that sending you down a different route in the a different side of the console wars.
Yeah, joy exactly. Still, when they were still burning out, I guess they still go today. But
They were probably out there in the last embers, I reckon,
yeah,
realistically. Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
definitely peak just before that generation.
That's
Hey,
right. That's right.
maybe that aligned with me being a teenager or 20-year-old at the time. Who knows? Let's see. What I will say is that if you're a fan of the legendary adventures of Hercules and you need more Kevin Sorbo in your life, there is a boss fight against Hercules in this game. And I remember like going, "Hey, that's Kev. That's Kev." And I'm like, "Is Xena gonna rock up too?" And if you feel the need to like, violently tear apart Hercules and beat him down because you're angry at Kevin Sorbo and that show, pick up God of War 3 Remastered. Johnny, it's enough about the PS4 and one of my top games. What do you got next for us?
So I'm going to take you back a little bit further back, and this is into the early 90s and the arrival of the Tetris craze.
Ooh.
So I know probably for most people, the probably more iconic version of Tetris is the GameCube, not the GameCube, the Game Boy Tetris, and that moved that handheld system like crazy. Tetris
It was perfect, wasn't it, for Game Boy?
It was perfect
It's
for the
perfect game
handheld
for Game
system, and it really pushed the handheld. I unfortunately never owned a Game Boy back in the day. So the version of Tetris I was playing was on my NES. And I just I wouldn't say it's like my favorite game or anything like that, but it's definitely it was an NES title that was so unique. It was this puzzle game where obviously everyone knows Tetris. You're rearranging, trying to get all your blocks in a row so you can clear. And as you progress through the levels, the speed of the game increases, and it gets more kind of hectic, and you get handed more kind of crazy different shapes to match and stuff like that. And I just the thing about this that really sticks in my memory is how this kind of broadened the appeal of Nintendo, because games like Mario and stuff like that, like kids were probably mostly playing at the time. But I have these distinct memories of like older cousins and that, like wanting to play the NES to play Tetris, and like I have memories of like waiting around for older cousins or siblings of friends to finish their game of Tetris where they're trying to get a high score so I could actually play the NES, because it was so addictive, and it had so much appeal, and everyone was trying to beat their high score and everything like that. So yeah, I just think it's such an iconic title, and it's made even more interesting by the fascinating backstory behind it, how it was developed by a game developer in Soviet Russia, and it's got a really kind of convoluted backstory of how it kind of got got licensed by Nintendo after it was kind of came from behind the Iron Curtain back in the 80s. And that makes it all the more fascinating for me. But yeah, really, it's just a game I just think is so unique in its time, but then also so influential. Like I think it kind of set the bar for puzzle games after that. Really, set the level. Do you play much Tetris, Jono?
No, I remember. So I had a cousin who had it on Game Boy and experiencing it on there. And I think what's kind of interesting about Tetris, particularly of that era, is puzzle games are not a big genre in modern gaming, and they haven't been for many generations. But hearing what you said about people you knew who were like, "Oh, I want a NES for Tetris," I even like where I grew up in Australia, it's like, oh, for me, it wasn't really known as a NES game or even a Nintendo game. It was like Duck Hunt, Mario, Kung Fu, a bunch of other, and then licensed games. So Tetris, yeah, had that kind of global appeal. But when you look at it as a game, it's so good moment to moment. Like it's gripping moment to moment because you're constantly engaged.
Yeah.
You're motivated to get that high score. And it's even got the perfect like frustrated gamer, like throw your controller thing in it, which you know what that is, Johnny. It's the gaps. Like when you
Yeah.
get, like watching this footage, doesn't it just make you frustrated? You feel like, oh mate, it's too early in the game. This is way too early. 2 gaps already. It's way too early for that. And then that relief when you clear a line, definitely jumping into the brain of the game over there. But such a cool pick, Johnny, because like it's an epic franchise. It's got a great story behind it. Great call out. Yeah, love it. All right. Well, my last pick is also going way back, not as far as Johnny with Tetris, a bit further than the Two Towers. This game I picked is maybe not that well known. So I remember this game in this series through when my parents went to one of their friends' houses when I was just a young kid. And my brother and I went over to their place with them, and their kids had access to a PC, which we didn't at that time. And they're like, you need to see the computer. I'm like, yes, what's a computer? Like, how does it work? What games does it play? Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you need to see this game. And it was called Heroes of Might and Magic. Now, some people might know this series. It's a turn-based strategy series. It's been around for a long time. Started with the first game. There's about 7 or 8 in the series, and there's a new one being developed now. But essentially, it's a turn-based strategy game where there's a campaign built in, usually like a good and evil campaign. You pick one of like many factions. Now, I've got footage of the second one running because that was one of my favorite in the series, and I want to talk more about the reason why in a minute. And all the factions are based off classic mythological groups. So there'd be a faction called Stronghold, which has like orcs, goblins, trolls. I think it was wolves, cyclops. Yeah, that was the group of creatures. And then there was a necropolis, which had like liches, vampires, mummies, zombies, all that stuff. So for me, when I first, I guess, saw that put me definitely on the path of being interested in PC gaming and going, this is what games can do. Like, I can read about these things in books, or I can see them in movies. I talked about Clash of the Titans before. This is around that time, and it was like, oh, I can now play as a Medusa in this game, and I can turn people to stone. It was just like one of the coolest things, and I think it's why I've always loved gaming, like forever, like as a kid and as an adult. It's just like what it allows you to do in your life or experience, like that hands-on kind of control of a character or situation, and unlock all those kind of like experiences is wonderful. So yeah, I really like this. And the second game, which this is the footage of, was one of the first PC games that I ever bought for myself using the pocket money I'd saved up. It was at a time, and I haven't bought PC games for ages, particularly physical ones, mostly a console gamer, but it was at a time where I don't know if you bought physical games like this back in the day, Johnny, but you get the big box, you got the artwork on the box, you open that front bit and it's just got even more description in there or some special artwork. And then you open the box and there's just this beautiful manual inside, kind of like the old console games. This one had a gorgeous manual. It had all the units outlined, all their statistics, all of their, like for the units that had special functions. So, for example, like I said, the Medusa could freeze people. It would mention that as well, and all their stats. So it was just like a really complete, engaging, satisfying strategy game in a fantasy universe that appealed to me beyond everything else, like I think Panzer Fantasy, Lords of the Realm, stuff like that. It was just really wonderful. And then, as I'd mentioned to you or hinted at briefly before we did this episode, Johnny, so when I was playing this game, this was in high school time, roughly, and essentially, pre-Reddit, pre-YouTube, all that stuff, the developers, I'd played a lot of this game, and the developers announced a third game that they were creating, and they put it out for fan feedback. And that's something they've done in subsequent series. And they, here's the email address to contact if you've got suggestions. So I distinctly remember emailing going, oh, this is incredible. Like, I can contact these people. They're real people that make these games. The third one's coming. How exciting. And I gave them feedback on 3 particular features, and I'll never forget it. The Griffin, which was part of the dungeon kind of evil group, I remember saying, look, it's a creature of good. I think it belongs in the Night Town. Mix up the variety of that unit because they only have swordsmen, spearmen, archers. They don't have a flying unit. You need to balance things and put it in. And I said, I think you should replace that with a harpy. You put the harpy in the dungeon town because that's more of an evil creature. And even better, how about you make the harpy attack and then fly away? Like that would be a really interesting mechanic strategically. And then my third thing was the centaur, which was also part of the evil dungeon faction. I was like, that kind of belongs more with the elves and the dwarves, and it should be faster. And they emailed me back, and I couldn't believe it. But I kind of could as a kid because I was like, that's what they do. Developers have time to email you back with lengthy emails. And it wasn't just a, thanks for your email, that's lovely, go buy the next game. It was actually like, oh, look, that's fantastic feedback. Those are all features that all make sense, and we're currently designing the towns, and we're actually going to put those things in the game. And I kid you not, third game came along, and all three of the changes I suggested were in the third game and included by the developers. So I'll never forget that. That was always something that was just incredibly special to me. Kind of felt like a touch.
I hope you got a credit, John, like law
Yeah,
consultant.
I never looked. I never looked. I need to hang on, Johnny. We're pausing the episode. I've got to go. We haven't got time for Johnny's next game. Sorry, I've never looked. I actually need to look after this episode. But it's
that's
funny
awesome. That's a
because
cool story, John. That's so awesome. You had that individual that a real contact with the developer, and it wasn't just like template response of thanks. Can't wait for you to buy the next one. Like,
here's a 5% discount or whatever. Tell your friends or something
so
like that.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. That's a really memorable experience for sure.
Unforgettable, super special, and why I had to give that game a shout out. Heroes of Might and Magic 2. I'm going to check those credits later. Johnny, we are on to your final one, though. Very keen to hear about this one.
All right, so gonna push back even further, and this last game I want to mention is almost something we might encounter in the retro gaming area at PAX Australia, and this is Pac-land. So Pac-land from the mid-80s, I played in the arcade version, but this has been ported to so many different systems like the Commodore 64, etc. But so this was a Pac-Man game, but not a maze-based Pac-Man that we all know, are familiar with.
Yeah, when I saw this, Johnny, I was like, what is going on here?
This is a platformer.
Yeah.
This is a Pac-Man platformer. So Pac-Man has legs in this game, and he's
a hat?
And he's got a hat,
Robin Hood hat.
It's very stylish. He's cruising through the town, he's still like doing his normal kind of Pac-Man things,
dodging cars.
But messing around with ghosts and eating cherries and everything, which is all kind of standard Pac-Man stuff. But it is a platformer, and so I was playing this. This might be one of the first video games I ever played, potentially. This was an arcade machine I encountered in the sort of mid to late 80s. There was venues my parents would take me along where they would socialize, and indoor smoking was much more lax in that era, let's say.
Let's not forget that.
And in the corners of some fairly grubby smoke-filled venues, there were arcade machines, and there were probably games like Snow Brothers, maybe a bit of Bubble Bobble, an arcade version of Bubble Bobble, I think, maybe. But there was also Pac-land, and I remember sinking my coins, would have been, I don't know, I think they would have been like possibly dollar coins, maybe less even, into this Pac-Man platformer, and I'd be glued to it, if not playing it, watching the demo screen while my parents socialized and my father chain smoked. And I just have a really fixed in my memory is probably about around the middle of the game, there's this incredibly difficult jump you've got to make off a springboard, and I would always fail. Like, I'd always just not quite make it. It's one of those gaming frustration moments, and I never ever mastered that technique to clear this big jump that's yeah, sort of midway. I think it's roughly midway through the game from what I've worked out
Oh,
since. But it's the memory, the frustration of trying to clear that jump with Pac-Man is just burnt into my memory, along with those smoke-filled venues
yeah.
and all the passive smoking I did while I played Pac-land.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that does tie that kind of memory to you, though, like that breathing in sensation. Johnny, with this game, like, why do you think you picked this above all the arcade games, like with others to play? What do you reckon it appealed? Was it because you're like, I need to get that jump, which was possibly a rig, because that's how arcade games often work,
Yeah,
or was it something else about this game that was appealing compared to the other games, or?
I just remember it as being like this may very well. It's definitely one of the first arcade games I played, and very possibly the first video game I ever played. Because the first games I ever played were they were arcade machines in these venues in the 80s, and I think when you first suggested the topic, John, I automatically thought of this as like just possibly the first game experience I'd ever had. And not always not always in a good way. Like trying to clear that jump was a great frustration, and getting very close sometimes. But there was something about the technique. Having watched some footage of that more recently, I can see there's something about the technique to clear it. But back in the day, it was just beyond little Johnny to master that.
Well, I think we know what our homework is before we wrap up today's episode. I'm going to go check the credits for Heroes of Might and Magic 2. You're going to download the HD latest version with the rewind function and maybe some built-in cheat codes for Pac-land, and see what's beyond that jumping platform. And I bet you I know what it is, Johnny. I bet you it's another jumping platform that's
Probably.
even harder. It probably is. That's how arcade games works back in the day. Well, people of Perth and Beyond, we hoped you enjoyed today's episode. Like, we just felt like digging back into our memories and sharing some of our favorite experiences. We have so many exciting topics to come. Ninjutsu November, I'll say no more. November is very exciting. We've got more coming up. But Johnny, are there any final words you want to share with the viewers before we wrap up?
Yeah, no. I'm very excited for the episodes to come, and it's going to be a really fun ride to the end of the year, John. So I'm all set for it.
We're ready to go. Lots of surprises to come. Stay tuned. Thanks for joining us. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Hope you have a great weekend. And that's all from the Perth Gaming crew. Over and out. See ya.